Hi, welcome back to the channel. My name is Sam, and in today's video, we are going to be designing a game concept off of a prompt in 5 minutes or less. So if you're new to these style of videos, that's okay. I'll go over what we do. So if we pull up our screen here, we like to use the game prompt from the website letsmakeagame.net, and they have a really powerful tool called the game idea generator. And so I think it's powerful because it gives you something that you have to go off of without you having to think of it yourself. And so in this challenge, we will generate a prompt for us, which will give us a genre, rule, setting, and theme for us to design around. And then we will give ourselves a 5-minute time limit to ideate around. And after the timer goes off, we will update and kind of solidify where we got to with this concept and talk about the steps that we would need to take to move it forward to bring it to a testable state. And we will wrap up by kind of expressing whether we think that we ended with a concept that is worth pursuing or not. So with that all out of the way, let's generate our prompt. So for our prompt, our genre we got was a side scroller. Our rule is 1 minute. The setting is high fantasy and the theme is survival. All right, let's try that out. So we will set our clock to 5 minutes and begin. So side scroller, I've kind of used this board theme before, but we'll start with what we know. And so I'm thinking of sort of, you have different, everyone has a different personal player board that has 5 sections. And you have so you have that. We'll make that a little smaller. And I'm sort of not giving great audio right now to allow my brain to think. But you have that player board, and then potentially each board itself has a few platforms. So each board would be maybe randomly, there would be 5 sections to each board. And the knowns would be, there'd be 2 to 3 platforms on each side. And we would have our, so there'd be 2 sections. Everyone would have their own player board, or their character board and their side scroller board. And so you have your little character token to start the game that would start in on your center tile within this side scrolling platform. And so I think that the 1 minute challenge it'd be a real-time style game. And sort of what I'm thinking for the character board is that you have maybe 4 action tiles that you have spent, so you have 4 action tiles, and so each one has a different cost associated to it. There's an idea in my head. Let's see if I can talk through it well. But there'd be a cost. And so we'll do a zoomed out or a zoomed in view of what one of these tiles might look like. And so you have the cost to perform it down here. And this has some sort of movement ability and then a expending ability. So this would just be a directional that you could perform, and that might be it. So in a side scroller, this is kind of going to be a stream of consciousness at this point, but the 2 movements that you care about are up, over, jump up, and jump down. And so if we're trying to survive, at the end of each round, these will shift and you'll get a new tile drawn randomly from a stack or something like that. And so there'll be this ever scrolling kind of movement up here. And the goal of the game is to keep your character pawn on the map. And the last person standing gets to do that. And so my initial thought is that each tile has a basic movement that you can perform, and the bottom action of the tile would be like a special power, but we won't, for this 5-minute challenge, we won't worry about the special powers. And so the core concept would be that you have each of these movements laid out to perform. And so basically the core loop of the game would be that on each you have to flip them in order, and before you can, so like once it's used once, you have to use every other tile before you can use that one again. And so once all 4 tiles have been flipped, they reset. And so we'll stop that there. So we'll finish this thought and wrap up what we need to do to make this playable. Because the mind block that I had in this challenge was how to make the 1 minute challenge. So if we ignore the rule of the 1 minute, what we've come up with is sort of a concept for a side scroller survival game. And so there would be, everyone would start the game with 5. Oh, we lost connection. All right. Let me try. So we've lost connection, so we'll just switch back to the screen. So our challenge was to come up with a game in 5 minutes or less for the prompt of side scroller, 1 minute, high fantasy, and survival. And so what we came up with is that everyone would get a board that has 5 sections in it, and each of those sections have different platforms for you to continue to move and survive, like not fall off the map on. And so at the end of each round, the 4 will shift and a new one will be played in like lieu of the one that's discarded. So you'll always have 5 sections of your side scrolling map to survive on. And I'm going to take 2 seconds to actually try and re-screen share because it'll be easier to talk through this. Now we're back up and running. So let's switch cameras again. All right, we'll do a hard cut and then. Sorry about that, the screen cut out. So we're back and live. And so to recap, our challenge was to come up with a game concept in 5 minutes that was based off the prompt of a side scroller, 1 minute high fantasy survival prompt. And so what we came up with is there would be this rotating conveyor belt board up here that you would have your little meeple starting in the middle, and the goal of the game is to be the last one to have their meeple on this side scroller. And so how you survive is you, after every round, this will shift down and there'll be a new tile placed in the front, and so that takes care of our side scroller element. And so how you move around it, we came up with the concept of that there's 4 tiles that you have to flip all 4 of them before they can reset. And so the 4 movements you have are just over, you have up, you have over up, and you have over down. And so that is where we got to in the 5 minutes. And so the next steps that we still have to take are figuring out what the penalty is. So like if we have our setup like this, this would clearly have to be an up. This would have to be an over up. And what would the penalty be if we just went over and then fell? I don't know if there's a set amount of damage that you can take or not. But that is the core loop of what we came up with. So we'd have to figure out the Actually, I'd probably just make a bunch of randomly generated tiles like this and say that ignore the 1 minute rule challenge right now. So I'd come up with maybe 13 or something different platform setups, and I would have these 4 different arrow tiles that I'd make, and I'd just try this out solo, where after I flip each tile, I would get a new, the core loop I'd do is I would flip and then shift and see how long I could survive with the rules of you can't flip the tiles back over until you've used all of them. And I would see if that creates an infinite loop or not, to see if this concept even makes sense to add into a game. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you came up with this prompt in the comments below. And if you like this style of content, I post these videos every Friday, so please subscribe. I think I'm going to